When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they'd keep the cows up there for 2 months. But while they were up there, they would keep themselves busy. They would wake up, do the garden, do everything else, water for the cows, take care of everything on the farm, go back in, eat dinner, go back out, do the garden, and then went to sleep. It was always the same. The work was easy, but it was boring. Then one day, Thomas had an idea that would change everything. "Let's make a doll the size of a man," he said. "It would be fun to make, and we could put it out in the garden to scare away the birds." "It should look like Harold," Alfred said. Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks and straw. They put old clothes on there and a twisted frown. They gave it a pointy nose like Harold's and a tiny eyes like his. And then they added hair. And then each morning was the same. They'd take Harold out and put him up in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night they brought him back in so he wouldn't get ruined. When they felt playful, they'd joke with him. Like one of them would say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" And the other one, making the other believe that he was Harold, would answer in a creepy voice, "Very slowly." And they would both laugh, but not Harold. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, or kick him, or punch him. Sometimes they would take the food that they were eating, which they were both sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like the stew, Harold?" Alfred asked. "Well, you better eat it, or else." And they would both howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas was done wiping Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Urgh." "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred said. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire," Thomas said, "and that'll be that." "Let's not do anything stupid," Alfred said. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll just leave them behind. For now, let's just keep an eye on 'em." So they left Harold in the back corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then the doll grunted, but that was all. Ugh. Ugh. One day they had decided that maybe it was just a mouse or some insects had gotten inside Harold and were making those noises. So they went back to their usual routine. They'd bring Harold out. They'd put him up in the garden. Each night they brought him back in. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as bad as ever. One day, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. "Harold is growing," Alfred said. "I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. "Maybe it's just our imagination," Alfred said. "We've been here up on this mountain too long." They both decided that they'd take the cows down back in the valley the next day. The next morning while they were eating breakfast, Harold stood up out of the corner and walked out of the hut. He got up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night he trotted like that. The next morning he climbed down from the roof and sat in the far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cows down into the valley that very day. When they came back and they looked for him, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt like they had just relieved a great danger and just kept walking and joking down the trail back to the field and the pasture. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, the village. But they had gotten about a mile or two. Then they realized that they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Neither one wanted to go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. There really is nothing to be afraid of, they said. After all, what could a doll do? Thomas said. They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. I'll catch up to you, he said, and went on back for the milking stools. When Alfred got to a clean opening of the walk, he looked back for Thomas. He could not see him anywhere, but he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again, and as Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun.